Hello, I'm Hannah with the Lethbridge Transparency Council, and I'm here interviewing Marissa Black, a city council candidate. Welcome, Marissa.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Hannah.
So starting off, what do you think needs improvement in the processes of city council and administration, and how would you make those improvements?
So actually, I currently think that the administration team does a fantastic job of relaying information in a timely fashion to City Council. And I think that City Council is very fortunate to have the administration to ensure their strategic plan set out at the beginning of the term is carried out. So I'm not sure I would make any improvements.
Absolutely. So what recommendations would you make to engage more citizens in the city's municipal development plan and process?
So I believe that the process should involve going out into communities and to meet people where they're at. There are many people who don't have access to technology or are not comfortable making verbal presentations at public hearings, or who are typically underrepresented and feel their voice doesn't matter. One way council could make this come to life, that people feel more comfortable to give their answers or feedback, is to engage community neighborhood associations in smaller settings or coffee table talks, which is a low stress environment. People can come and go and they can give their input. It's also to schedule these same kinds of meetings with community centers, such as the Multicultural Center, the Lethbridge Senior Citizens Organizations, and others like that.
Yeah, there's certainly lots of different ways to engage lots of different groups, and everybody has their preferred method of communication for sure. And that looks different for everybody. So absolutely. So what do you think the top 3 issues are in the community, and what are your plans to address those issues?
The top 3 issues I believe our community faces right now is access to affordable housing, access to proper mental health resources and harm reduction tools, and the need for accessible public services. The current council has already dedicated dollars in the current capital improvement plan to affordable housing, and I think that is wonderful. I would love to put more dollars into a day and nighttime space for people to be able to go in order to access shelter from the elements, have clean drinking water, and access to clean restroom facilities. In order to bring more mental health resources to the city has to work together with the provincial and federal governments. Unfortunately, the reality right now is that people are dying due to drug overdoses. I believe we need to address mental health early on in the hopes that people can find healthy coping mechanisms and not need to turn to drugs. However, when a person is already suffering addictions, they should still be treated with respect and dignity. They should not be left to die on the streets, and harm reduction in tandem with our overarching health programs to help people struggling with addictions ensures that people's brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends are taken care of. So the need for accessible public services is a broader topic, but this includes accessibility for people living with all kinds of disabilities. When we think about accessibility, we typically think about mobility challenges. That's something that affects old people, young people, people with visible and invisible disabilities. And that's certainly something we need to think about. We also need to think about accessible pedestrian signal systems for visually impaired, using closed captioning for hearing impaired, and plain text English for people who with developmental disabilities. Everybody should have access to the service they need and understand how council's decisions affect them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about accessibility, making sure that everybody has access to participate in government, so it's equal to all for all people. Absolutely. So moving on, what would you want the city to do to create a good environment for business in Lethbridge?
So the biggest thing I think is the city needs to take a strong stance against open pit coal mining. This is because all businesses, especially industries like Cavendish, for example, who employ thousands of people living in Lethbridge, would leave if they didn't have access to clean water. The city needs to maintain quality of water for existing and future businesses that choose to make Lethbridge their home. Additionally, we can promote the wonderful businesses we already have here. And with the university and college, we have kind of a unique opportunity. Some of the business programs, in particular the Dillon School of Business, They have programs to work with businesses to help them with their needs. And I think the city can make these programs better known and further push that engagement between business owners and then potential employees after graduation.
Yeah, I am from the Dillon School of Business, and I did take part in their experience opportunities. So a subtle plug to businesses also, look into it. There's lots of really great programs and students that you can take advantage of. Absolutely, since there's so many of us here. So circling back to the MDP, what decisions did you agree with and what decisions did you disagree with?
So I was so happy to see the emphasis on fostering an inclusive environment for everybody. In particular, encouraging and making use of stories of the Indigenous peoples was so powerful and a good step in the right direction with regard to truth and reconciliation. I was also pleased to see focus on affordable housing and climate change, as these are two areas I think our city needs to be on top of. Everyone deserves to have a home to go to at the end of the night, and everyone deserves to have access to clean water, because we have a duty to protect our planet for future generations.
Absolutely. So talking about transportation, how would you prioritize transportation in the future for Lethbridge?
So I think the new council coming up is absolutely going to have to prioritize busing, as many people are unhappy with the current system. The current bus system does not work for many people in Lethbridge due to dissolution of many bus stops that people previously relied on. I've heard from some people that it's actually faster for them to walk to work than to the nearest bus station. I think that's unacceptable. I think it's imperative that we make the changes to transit so people are able to continue going on their jobs and accessing the services they need. In terms of order of priority, I think certainly buses are going to have to be moved up to first. Pedestrian, bicycles, commercial vehicles, multi-occupancy vehicles like taxis and carpooling, and then last would be single occupancy automobiles.
Transit certainly something that's been on the top of everybody's mind. So I think you're right that council definitely will be addressing that, at least based on the interviews I've had. So that's I think certainly going to be coming for sure. So moving on to finances, where do you think the city should be spending more money?
So I think the city needs to increase spending in mental health supports to ensure that our vulnerable populations are taken care of. And as I said before, increasing funding so that we can have a 24/7 building for people who are houseless to have somewhere to go to get out of the elements. And then thirdly, green initiatives to ensure our environment is sustainable for future generations is where I would put more money into.
So where do you think they should be spending less money?
So I believe the city needs to prioritize our public services. We can do this by, instead of decreasing funding, applying for federal and provincial grants and different levels of funding to ensure that no services provided to the community need to be privatized or cut, while still ensuring that we can continue to meet the needs of all people who live in Lethbridge at a high level of service.
Certainly has federal money and provincial money available for things. So it's the future council definitely should look at that as an avenue. Absolutely. So if we're talking about large capital projects, the third bridge is one of the things that is on the ballot this year. So what criteria do you recommend the city look at prior to approving these large capital projects?
Well, certainly, I think we need to examine the public's perception of any given project. People need to feel like their voice is being heard when council is spending money, because every decision council makes will affect the services people rely on and there's their day-to-day lives. Additionally, we need to consider the environmental costs of the decisions we make, including propositions that have not yet been decided on. The city should examine also the economic impact of every decision. For example, getting people accesses to supports they need and off the streets is a good financial investment, because these individuals are going to be spending their dollars directly into the Lethbridge economy. And additionally, people may feel safer going to businesses downtown, and this will increase the money flowing into local businesses, which are really kind of the backbone of our community and our economy. We need to make sure that each decision we make has the best possible outcome. So that's how I would address that.
Yeah, thank you. So our last question is just looking at the capital improvement plan and the plans already on the books. What expenses are you in favor of, and what expenses are you not in favor of?
So I am a huge supporter of the accessibility improvement portion of the budget, which will bring more ramp and accessible pedestrian signal systems to our city. It's really important to me. I have mobility challenges in myself. I walk with mobility aids most of the time. So as somebody sort of in that community, I really see a need for that. And it's so important to me that not only old people, which is a big consideration of the budget, but also people with invisible and visible disabilities are also being taken into consideration when we make these decisions. The other expense is environmental projects. As I said before, those are hugely important to me because these resources are non-renewable, and our planet, unfortunately, isn't just going to regenerate new water on its own. I love that we're going to try to look into putting solar panels to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, green busing. All of that is awesome, and I hope that we can make those projects happen. One thing I don't think the current CIP plans take into account is I looked at several different asphalt. We're going to pave new roads. We're going to pave new, in particular, I looked at one, the Nikayuko pathways. They need to be updated. And while I believe we definitely need to update these pathways because for people with walkers or wheelchairs, those tiny cracks in the sidewalk, super bad. But the problem is when I look at it, it says we need to consider this down the road, and it talks about cost of projects, but they never talk about greenhouse gas emissions. And there's no way you can tell people that paving the pathways by Nikayuko does not produce any greenhouse gas emissions. So I would really, rather than, I don't want to cancel those projects, but I think we need to have a better look into how these projects are going to impact our environment.
And there's certainly lots of different programs and methods to be able to provide those environmental assessments. And I know the Waste and Recycling Division is very into looking into environmental impacts. So it's possible that they can provide some insight as well. That was the last question I had. So thank you so much, Marissa. I really appreciate you taking the time. Is there anything you'd like to add or let people know how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say that if elected, I would be so open to maintaining an open door policy. I know that it is difficult to answer every single person, but I really make it a priority to listen to all different viewpoints. I have a background in research and accounting, so my scientific research background's in sustainable agriculture, hence why those green initiatives are so important to me. And I've just seen firsthand the amount of bright, young and old individuals that live in Lethbridge and the diversity that we bring here. So it's a really exciting time. If you want to get in touch with me, you can certainly do that by my website, which is marissablack.yql.ca. My Gmail is marissablack.yql@gmail.com. My phone number is 403-894-2299. And you can feel free to call or text, whatever your preference is. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, Marissa Black YQL. We can see a common theme here. And thank you so much for watching this. And I hope that whoever you're voting for, that I will see you at the polls on the 18th. Thanks so much, Hannah, for having me. And I look forward to potentially working with you for the next 4 years.
Yes, thank you again for doing the interview.